high-handed, insolent frauds, and there are insidious, sneaking ones. And there is, I fear, even on the most designing artist's part, always witless enough good faith, always anxious enough desire to fail to guard him against their deceits. Trying to recover, here, for recognition, the germ of my idea, I see that it must have considered not at all in any conceit of a plot, nefarious name, in any flash upon the fancy of a set of relations, or in any one of those situations that, by a logic of their own, immediately fall for the fabulist into movement, into a march or a rush, a patter of quick steps, but altogether in the sense of a single character, the character and aspect of a particular engaging young woman, to which all the usual elements of a subject, certainly of a setting, were to need to be superadded. Quite as interesting as the young woman herself at her best, do I find, I must again repeat, this projection of memory upon the whole matter of the growth in one's imagination of some such apology for a motive. These are the fascinations of the fabulist's art, these lurking forces of expansion, these necessities of upspringing in the seed, these beautiful determinations on the part of the idea entertained, to grow as tall as possible, to push into the light and the air and thickly flower there. And quite as much these fine possibilities of recovering, from some good standpoint on the ground gained, the intimate history of the business, of retracing and reconstructing its steps and stages. I've always fondly remembered a remark that I heard fall years ago from the lips of Ivan Turgenev in regard to his own experience of the usual origin of the fictive picture. It began for him almost always with the vision of some person or persons who hovered before him, soliciting him as the active or passive figure, interesting him and appealing to him just as they were and by what they were. He saw them, in that fashion, as disponables, saw them subject to the chances, the complications of existence, and saw them vividly, but then had to find for them the right relations, those that would most bring them out. To imagine, to invent and select and piece together the situations most useful and favourable to the sense of the creatures themselves, the complications they would be most likely to produce and to feel. To arrive at these things is to arrive at my story, he said, and that's the way I look for it. The result is that I'm often accused of not having story enough. I seem to myself to have as much as I need, to show my people to exhibit their relations with each other, for that is all my measure. If I watch them long enough, I see them come together, I see them placed, I see them engaged in this or that act and in this or that difficulty. How they look and move and speak and behave, always in the setting I have found for them, is my account of them, of which I dare say, alas, que cela manque souvent d'architecture. But I would rather, I think, have too little architecture than too much, when there's danger of its interfering with my measure of the truth. The French, of course, like more of it than I give, having, by their own genius, such a hand for it, and indeed one must give all one can. As for the origin of one's wind-blown germs themselves, who shall say, as you ask, where they come from? We have to go too far back, too far behind to say. Isn't it all we can say that they come from every quarter of heaven, that they are there at almost any turn of the road? They accumulate, and we're always picking them over, selecting among them. They are the breath of life, by which I mean that life in its own way breathes them upon us. They are so, in a manner prescribed and imposed, floated into our minds by the current of life. That reduces to imbecility the vain critic's quarrel so often with one's subject, when he hasn't the wit to accept it. Will he point out then which other it should properly have been? His office being essentially to point out. Il en serait bien embarrassé. Ah, when he points out what I've done or failed to do with it, that's another matter. There he's on his ground. I give him up my architecture, my distinguished friend concluded, as much as he will. So this beautiful genius, and I recall with comfort the gratitude I drew from his reference to the intensity of suggestion that may reside in the stray figure, the unattached character, the image en disponibilité. It gave me a higher warrant than I seemed then to have met for just that blessed habit of one's own imagination, the trick of investing some conceived or encountered individual, some brace or group of individuals, with the germinal property and authority. I was myself so much more antecedently conscious of my figures than of